The living room felt smaller than it used to. Maybe it was the tension that had been building for months, condensing the air until it pressed against my chest like a physical weight. Or maybe it was just that I was seeing this place, my daughter's apartment, where I'd been invited for what I thought would be a family dinner, with new clarity. My name is Vincent Harlow, 63 years old, retired as of 3 weeks ago from a career in municipal infrastructure management, father to one daughter, grandfather to one confused 12-year-old boy who was currently sitting on the far end of the couch, looking at his phone but clearly listening to everything happening around him. "So, Dad," my daughter Melissa said, stretching the word dad out like it was an obligation she was tired of fulfilling. "You're officially retired now. What's the plan?" I sat in the armchair they'd designated as mine, the one with the worn cushion and the spring that poked through if you sat wrong. The guest chair, though I'd never felt like much of a guest in my own daughter's home. "The plan is to enjoy retirement," I said simply. "Relax, travel a little maybe." Her husband, my son-in-law Derek, snorted from his position on the newer, nicer couch. He was holding a beer, his third of the evening, and the smirk on his face made my jaw tighten. "Travel?" he repeated. "On $900 a month? That's barely enough to cover basics, old man." Old man. He'd started calling me that about 2 years ago, right around the time he'd gotten his promotion to regional sales manager and decided that made him the authority on everything. "Derek," I said evenly, "my pension is my business." "Your pension is a joke," he shot back. $900 a month after 40 years of work? That's what happens when you play it safe your whole life, when you never take risks, when you're content to just exist. Melissa didn't defend me. She never did. Instead, she leaned back on the couch, crossing her legs, examining her manicured nails. "Dad, we've been talking," she said, not looking at me. "And we think it's time to be realistic about your situation." "My situation?" I repeated. "You can't afford to live alone anymore," she continued, finally meeting my eyes. "Your apartment lease is up next month. Rent is going up everywhere. And with your tiny pension, well, you're going to need help." I'd known this conversation was coming. I'd felt it building for weeks, ever since I'd announced my retirement. The way they'd looked at me, the way they'd started calculating, planning, deciding what my life would look like without bothering to ask me. "I appreciate the concern," I said carefully, "but I'll be fine." Derek laughed, that sharp, dismissive sound that made my grandson Ethan flinch slightly on the couch. "Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit that hype button to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where you're all tuning in from." "You'll be fine?" Derek said. "Vincent, let's be real here. You're broke, retired with basically nothing. No savings that matter, no investments, no backup plan. You're going to end up as a burden, and we're trying to help you avoid that." "By doing what exactly?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Melissa leaned forward, her voice taking on that reasonable tone she used when she was about to say something unreasonable. "You'll move in here," she said. "We have the basement. It's not much, but it's shelter. And in exchange for living here rent-free, you'll help out around the house. Cleaning, yard work, errands, that kind of thing." "We'll give you a room," Derek added, his smirk widening. "Well, a space. The basement isn't finished, but we'll set up a cot. And you'll earn your keep. That's fair, right? We provide housing, you provide labor." I looked at my daughter, looked at the woman I'd raised alone after her mother died when she was 10, the girl I'd worked double shifts for so she could have dance lessons and summer camp, the young woman I'd put through college, taking out loans I'd only finished paying off 3 years ago. "You want me to be your servant," I said quietly. "Don't be dramatic," Melissa snapped. "We're offering you a place to live when you have nowhere else to go. We're being generous. And yes, we expect you to contribute. That's how families work." "Be useful for once," she added, and the casual cruelty of it hit like a slap. For once. As if 40 years of working to provide for her hadn't been useful, as if raising her alone hadn't been useful, as if every sacrifice I'd made hadn't counted because I didn't have a mansion to show for it. Derek stood up, stretching, clearly enjoying this. "Retired?" he said, looking down at me with barely concealed contempt. "With $900 a month? Yeah, you're going to need to earn your keep. Start by cleaning the basement. That's your new job. Get it ready for yourself. There's 40 years of junk down there. Should keep you busy." He took a long drink of his beer, then added, "And after that, the lawn needs mowing. The gutters need cleaning. The garage is a disaster. Plenty of work for a guy with nothing but time." Ethan was staring at his grandfather now, his phone forgotten in his lap. His face showed confusion, embarrassment, and something else. Maybe shame at what his parents were doing. I could have argued. Could have told them exactly what I thought of their generous offer. Could have listed every way they'd disrespected me over the years, every time they treated me like I was less than, like I was a burden they tolerated rather than family they valued. But I didn't. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Thick, official paper with an embossed seal visible even through the fold. I held it for a moment, feeling its weight, its significance. Then I tucked it back into my pocket without opening it. "I'll handle things tomorrow," I said calmly, standing up. Derek laughed again. "That's it? You're just going to accept it? God, you really are weak." "Tomorrow," I repeated, looking at my daughter, looking at the woman who thought I was desperate, dependent, defeated. She thought I'd accepted the role of servant, thought I'd resigned myself to a life in their unfinished basement, cleaning their messes and mowing their lawn in exchange for shelter. They had no idea what was coming. I walked to the door, past Ethan, who stood up suddenly. "Grandpa," he said quietly, "are you okay?" I put my hand on his shoulder. "I'm fine, Ethan. Better than fine, actually. I'll see you soon." As I left, I heard Derek say to Melissa, "Well, that was easier than expected. Your old man knows when he's beat." I smiled as I closed the door behind me. They'd find out tomorrow just how wrong they were. The disrespect hadn't started overnight. It had been gradual, accumulating like compound interest, each small, slight building on the ones before until the weight of it all became crushing. I could trace it back if I forced myself to remember. 10 years ago, when Melissa had first started dating Derek, things had been different. He'd been charming then, attentive, respectful. He'd called me sir, and asked my opinion on things, and made an effort to connect. That lasted about 6 months, right up until the wedding. The wedding that Melissa and Derek had planned without much input from me, despite the fact that I was paying for a significant portion of it. They'd made it clear that my role was to write checks and show up when told to. "Dad, we appreciate the financial help," Melissa had said when I'd suggested maybe contributing some ideas for the reception. "But Derek and I have a vision. We don't want it to look cheap." Cheap. That was the first time she'd used that word to describe anything associated with me. It wouldn't be the last. After the wedding, the dynamic shifted permanently. Derek had his hooks in, and suddenly I wasn't Melissa's father. I was the guy from the previous generation who didn't understand modern success, modern ambition, modern life. Derek made good money in sales. Melissa had a decent marketing job. Together they lived in this apartment complex in what they considered an up-and-coming neighborhood, though from what I could see, it was just gentrification with a marketing budget. They had nice things. New car every 3 years, designer furniture, vacations to places they could Instagram, and they made sure everyone knew they'd achieved this through their own hard work and ambition. My contributions to Melissa's life, the years of sacrifice, the college tuition, the down payment help for their first car, were conveniently forgotten, or worse, dismissed as what parents are supposed to do. The disrespect came in small cuts at first. Family dinners where my stories were interrupted or ignored, holiday gatherings where I was invited late, almost as an afterthought, conversations about family decisions where my input was politely acknowledged and then completely disregarded. "That's old school thinking, Vincent," Derek would say whenever I offered an opinion. "Things work differently now." 5 years ago, Thanksgiving, I'd been invited to their apartment for dinner. I'd brought a homemade apple pie, my specialty, the one Melissa used to love as a kid. I'd spent the morning making it, using my late wife's recipe, remembering better times. Derek had taken one look at it and said, "We actually already have dessert. Melissa ordered from that fancy bakery downtown. But thanks, I guess. We'll find somewhere to put this." The pie had ended up on the kitchen counter, untouched, while everyone ate the bakery's pumpkin cheesecake. I'd found my pie in the trash the next day when I'd come back to help clean up. 3 years ago, Ethan's birthday party. It was at a rented venue, one of those places with bounce houses and video games and staff to handle everything. I'd been told to show up at 3 p.m. I'd arrived at 2:30 with a gift, a vintage comic book collection I'd been putting together for months, knowing Ethan loved superheroes. Derek had intercepted me at the entrance. "You're early," he'd said, not welcoming me in. "The party doesn't start until 3. "I thought I could help set up," I'd offered. "We've got it handled. Just come back at 3. So I'd sat in my car in the parking lot for 30 minutes, watching other guests arrive and be welcomed in, while I waited for the official start time. When I'd finally been allowed to join, Derek had taken Ethan's gifts and piled them on a table. My carefully wrapped package, containing comics worth several $100s that I'd hunted down at collector shops, had been tossed in with gift cards and store-bought toys. Later, I'd asked Ethan if he liked the comics. "What comics, Grandpa?" he'd asked, confused. Derek had never given them to him. I'd found out later they'd been sold online. Derek had pocketed the money. 2 years ago, the family investment conversation. Derek and Melissa had asked me to coffee, just the three of us, no Ethan. They'd been unusually friendly, asking about my work, my health, making small talk. Then Derek had pulled out a folder. "Vincent, we want to talk to you about an opportunity," he'd said, sliding papers across the table. "Melissa and I are investing in a business venture. A friend of mine is launching a startup, and we're getting in on the ground floor." "We need $15,000, Melissa had added. "We were hoping you could contribute. As a family investment, we'd pay you back with interest once the company goes public." I'd looked at the papers. The business venture was vague at best, and the friend running it had no track record I could find. It smelled like a scam. "I don't think this is a good investment," I'd said carefully. Derek's friendly demeanor had evaporated instantly. "Of course you don't," he'd snapped, "because you've never taken a risk in your life. You've never built anything. You've just coasted, playing it safe, working your boring government job for 40 years. "Dad," Melissa had said, her voice hard, "we're giving you a chance to be part of something bigger than yourself, to finally contribute to the family's success instead of just existing." I'd declined. They'd been furious. They'd barely spoken to me for 6 months after that. The startup had folded within a year. They'd lost their $15,000. They'd never mentioned it again, and they'd certainly never thanked me for not losing my money along with theirs. The worst part wasn't the individual incidents. It was the pattern they revealed. Every family decision was made without me. When they'd decided to put Ethan in private school, a decision that would stretch their budget thin and require both of them to work longer hours, they'd announced it as a done deal. My concern that Ethan might do just as well in public school was dismissed as not understanding modern education. When they'd bought their new car, financing it at an interest rate that made me wince, they'd shown it off like a trophy. My suggestion that maybe they could find a better deal or consider a used vehicle was met with eye rolls and comments about my poverty mindset. When they decided to renovate their kitchen, a $30,000 project they couldn't afford without maxing out credit cards, they'd asked my opinion only after signing the contracts. And even then, it was clear they were just going through the motions of pretending I mattered. "Dad, you don't get it," Melissa had said when I gently questioned if the renovation was necessary. "This is an investment in our home, in our future. You've never understood that you have to spend money to make money." The irony was almost painful. I'd spent my career managing municipal infrastructure budgets, analyzing costs, projecting returns, making financial decisions that affected entire communities. But in my daughter's eyes, I was financially illiterate because I didn't believe in $30,000 kitchen renovations. The phrase that hurt most that appeared again and again in different forms: "Your opinion doesn't matter." Sometimes it was said explicitly. Often it was implied through ignored advice, dismissed concerns, decisions made and announced without my input. I was a prop in their lives. Someone to be displayed when it was convenient. "Look, we include Vincent in family events." And dismissed when it wasn't. "He doesn't understand modern life." And always, always, there was the underlying message: "You're less than us, less successful, less ambitious, less valuable." 3 months ago, I'd announced my retirement. I was 63, which meant I could access my full pension benefits. I'd worked for 42 years, starting at 21 right out of community college. 42 years of steady, reliable work managing infrastructure projects for the city. I'd called Melissa to tell her. A phone call, because actually visiting required an invitation, and I'd learned not to just drop by. "I'm retiring at the end of the quarter," I'd told her. "Retiring?" She'd sounded surprised. "Can you afford that?" "My pension kicks in. I'll be fine." "How much is the pension?" I'd hesitated, knowing how she'd react. $900 a month? Silence. Then, $900? Dad, that's nothing. You can't live on that." "I'll manage," I'd said, which was true in ways she couldn't imagine. "We need to talk about this," she'd said. "You and Derek and me, we need to make plans." Those plans, I'd understood immediately, were not going to be made with my input. They were going to be made for me, about me, without real consideration for what I wanted. And I'd been right. Over the next few months, there'd been comments, hints. Trial balloons floated to gauge my reaction. Derek saying, "When you can't afford your apartment anymore, we'll have to figure something out." Melissa saying, "I can't support 2 households, Dad. You need to be realistic." Both of them saying, in various ways, "When you retire, we'll put you to work." It had been framed as helping me, as being generous, as family looking out for family. But I'd heard the subtext clearly. "You're about to become our problem, and we're going to make sure you earn whatever scraps we throw you. What Melissa and Derek didn't know, what I'd never told them, was the truth about my financial situation. They thought I was poor because I lived modestly. They thought I was desperate because I'd worked a government job instead of chasing corporate promotions. They thought I was weak because I didn't brag about money or flaunt success. They were wrong about all of it. The truth was hidden in file cabinets in my apartment, in investment accounts they knew nothing about, in decisions I'd made quietly over 4 decades. I'd started investing when I was 23 years old, 2 years into my career. Small amounts at first, $50 a month, then $100, then more as my salary increased. I'd maxed out my 401k contributions every year. I'd bought index funds and held them through crashes and recoveries. I'd lived below my means, saved aggressively, and let compound interest work its magic. After my wife died when Melissa was 10, I'd received a life insurance payout, $200,000. Instead of spending it or using it to upgrade our lifestyle, I'd invested most of it, keeping only enough to ensure Melissa's childhood stayed stable. That $200,000, invested carefully over 23 years, had grown significantly. Every bonus I'd received, and municipal infrastructure managers got performance bonuses when projects came in under budget, I'd invested. Every tax refund, every unexpected windfall, every dollar I could save from living frugally, I'd put to work. I'd never lived in luxury, but I'd lived comfortably. I'd never driven new cars, but my used cars were reliable. I'd never taken expensive vacations, but I'd taken Melissa camping and to national parks, making memories that mattered. And through it all, I'd saved, invested, built wealth quietly. By the time I retired, my investment portfolio was worth $1.8 million. My pension of $900 a month wasn't my primary income. It was just a small supplement to the investment income I could draw. I could comfortably live on $6,000 to $7,000 a month without touching principal, just living off dividends and carefully timed distributions. But I'd never told Melissa any of this, partly because I believed in financial privacy, partly because I wanted her to value me for who I was, not what I had, and partly because I'd learned, over the years of watching her marry Derek and absorb his values, that telling her about money would only change how she tried to use me, not how she treated me. She thought I was desperate. I was actually wealthy enough to make a move that would change everything. 3 months ago, I'd learned that the apartment complex where Melissa and Derek lived was going up for sale. The owner was retiring, looking to liquidate, and was offering the entire 12-unit building for $840,000. It was below market value. The units were well maintained. The location was good, the income potential was solid, and I could buy it in cash. So I did. I'd closed on the property 2 weeks ago, 1 week after my retirement became official. The transaction had been private, handled through an LLC I'd set up to maintain anonymity. As far as anyone knew, the building had been bought by a property management company. No one knew the property management company was wholly owned by Vincent Harlow. No one knew their new landlord was the desperate, broke old man they decided to turn into their servant. The papers in my pocket, the ones I'd pulled out at their apartment and then tucked away without revealing, were the ownership documents. Proof of purchase. Title deed with my name on it. Tomorrow, I'd handle things. Tomorrow, they'd learn exactly how wrong they'd been about everything. The property management office was in a converted storefront in the downtown business district run by Sarah Martinez, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd helped me navigate the purchase process. I'd arrived at 9 a.m., right when they opened. "Mr. Harlow," Sarah greeted me, standing to shake my hand. "Congratulations. Today we make it completely official." The final documents were spread across her desk. Transfer of ownership papers, title documents, tax records, tenant agreements, building insurance policies. Everything needed to formally transition the property from the previous owner's name to mine, well, to the LLC's name. But since I was the sole owner of Harlow Property Holdings LLC, it amounted to the same thing. "Let's go through everything one more time," Sarah said, settling into her chair. "The property at 2847 Riverside Avenue, comprising 12 residential units, common areas, and associated land. Purchase price, $840,000, paid in full from your investment account. No mortgage, no liens, no encumbrances." "Correct," I confirmed. "Current tenants," she continued, consulting her file. "All 12 units are occupied. 10 are on month-to-month leases, 2 are on annual leases with 6 months remaining. All tenants are current on rent except for Unit 7, which is 3 days late but still within the grace period." "And under state law," I said, wanting to confirm my understanding, "I'm required to honor existing lease terms but can adjust terms for month-to-month tenants with proper notice?" "Exactly. 30 days written notice for any changes to rent or lease terms for month-to-month tenants. For the 2 annual leases, you're locked in until those expire unless the tenant breaches the agreement." Sarah pulled out a specific file, her expression becoming more careful. I need to ask, she said. Unit 4, your daughter's unit. You're aware that this creates a potential conflict of interest? Landlord-tenant relationships between family members can be complicated. I'm aware, I said. Which is why I want to handle this by the book. No special treatment, no family favors. They'll be treated like any other tenant. They're currently on a month-to-month lease at $1,100 per month, Sarah noted, which frankly is below market rate for that unit size and location. Market rate would be closer to $1,750. I know, I said. The previous owner had been a family friend of Derek's parents, which was why they'd gotten such a good deal. That favor was about to expire. Sarah slid the final documents toward me. Sign here, here, and here, and then the property is officially yours. I signed. My hand was steady. I felt no doubt, no hesitation. This wasn't about revenge, exactly. It was about justice, about consequences, about teaching a lesson that should have been learned years ago. You don't get to treat people like they're worthless and then expect them to support you. Congratulations, Sarah said as I signed the last page. You now own the complex. I ran my hand across the embossed seal on the ownership certificate. Harlow Property Holdings, LLC. Owner, Vincent Harlow. What's your first move? Sarah asked. I pulled out the notice I'd prepared the night before. It was printed on official letterhead I'd had made, formatted exactly according to state requirements for tenant notifications. Notice to tenants. Ownership transfer. Effective immediately, ownership of the property located at 208047 Riverside Avenue has been transferred to Harlow Property Holdings, LLC. All existing lease agreements remain in effect. Future rent payments should be made to the new management account detailed below. Updated rental agreements and lease terms will be provided within 30 days as required by state law. Below that, I'd listed each unit with its current status. Units 1-3, annual lease, no changes until expiration. Units 5-12, month-to-month lease, terms under review. Unit 4, month-to-month lease, rental adjustment notice to follow. And for Unit 4, my daughter's unit, I'd attached a second page, rental adjustment notice, 30-day notification, current monthly rent, 1-100 new monthly rent effective, 30 days from date of notice, 1/1840. Adjustment reflects current market rate for comparable units in this location. The increase was $740, more than my tiny pension, the one they'd mocked as insufficient to live on. But I wasn't done. I'd also designated my own status in the building. Unit 12, owner's suite. No rent Unit 12 was technically vacant. The previous owner had kept it as a manager's unit, but never occupied it. It was smaller than most units, just a one-bedroom, but it was on the top floor with a decent view. I'd be moving in next week. I'd be living rent-free in the same building where my daughter would now be paying $740 more per month. The irony was perfect. You're really doing this, Sarah said, reading the notices. Not judging, just observing. They told me I'd be their servant, I said quietly. They told me to start by cleaning their basement. They think I'm desperate and weak and dependent. This is me showing them the truth? Sarah nodded slowly. Well, legally, everything here is solid. You're within your rights as the new owner to adjust month-to-month leases to market rate. They can accept the new terms or move out. Those are their options. I know, I said. She handed me copies of all the documents. 3 full sets, one for my records, one for the building file, and one for my lawyer, just in case things got messy. When are you serving the notices? She asked. Today, I said. I'm going over this afternoon. I arrived at the apartment complex, my apartment complex, at 2 p.m. the next day. I'd spent the morning preparing. Printed 12 copies of the ownership transfer notice, one for each unit. Printed the rental adjustment notice for Unit 4 with extra copies because I knew they'd try to destroy the first one. Called my lawyer to put him on standby in case this escalated, and spent a long time standing in front of my bathroom mirror, practicing staying calm. This was going to be ugly, I knew that. But it was necessary. The building was a 3-story brick structure, well-maintained, with a decent courtyard and off-street parking. I'd always thought Melissa and Derek were lucky to live here, even if they didn't appreciate it. Now it was mine. I started with the other units first, slipping notices into door jambs or handing them directly to tenants who answered. Most people were polite, if confused. A few asked questions about the new ownership. I assured them nothing was changing for anyone on annual leases, and any adjustments for month-to-month tenants would be reasonable and properly communicated. Then I climbed the stairs to the second floor, to Unit 4. I could hear voices inside, Melissa and Derek, arguing about something. Their voices always had an edge lately. the sound of a couple who'd overstretched their budget and couldn't figure out how to stop. I knocked. The door opened. Derek stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking annoyed at being interrupted. "Vincent," he said, not bothering with pleasantries, "what are you doing here?" "Is Melissa home?" I asked. "Yeah, why?" "I need to talk to both of you." He rolled his eyes but stepped aside. "Fine, come in." Melissa was in the kitchen, looking at her laptop, probably working from home. She glanced up when I entered, and I saw the flash of irritation cross her face. "Dad, this isn't a good time," she said. "We're both busy." "This won't take long," I replied. Derek closed the door and leaned against it, arms crossed. "So what is it? You ready to start cleaning that basement?" I almost smiled. Almost. "Actually," I said, "I have something for you." I pulled out the ownership transfer notice and the rental adjustment notice, holding them together. Melissa stood up from the kitchen counter, walking over. "What's that?" "Just some paperwork you need to see," I said, handing her the documents. She took them with a confused frown. Derek moved to read over her shoulder. I watched their faces as they read, watched the confusion transform into disbelief. "This is a joke," Derek said, his voice uncertain. "Right? This is some kind of prank?" "Look at the seal," I said calmly. "Look at the signatures. Look at the property records number. You can verify everything with the county clerk's office." Melissa's hands were shaking slightly as she read the rental adjustment notice. Her voice came out strangled. "You bought this building?" "I did," I confirmed. "Closed on it 2 weeks ago. I'm the new owner." Derek snatched the papers from Melissa's hands, reading more carefully now. His face was going through a fascinating series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, dawning realization, and finally, rage. "This is bullshit," he shouted. "You can't afford this. You have a $900 pension. Where did you get $840,000? "That's my business," I said. "What's your business is that your rent is going up to market rate in 30 days? $1,840 per month? That's $740 more than you're currently paying." Melissa was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "Dad, you can't do this. We can't afford that much. You know we can't." "Then you'll need to find somewhere else to live," I said simply. "Or find a way to afford it. Those are your options." Derek was reading the notice again, looking for loopholes, looking for anything he could use to fight this. "This is revenge," he spat. "You're doing this because we asked you to help out around the house, because we offered you a place to stay." "You didn't offer me a place to stay," I corrected. "You offered me a cot in your unfinished basement in exchange for being your unpaid servant. There's a difference. We were helping you." Melissa's voice was rising toward hysteria. "You said you couldn't afford to live alone. We were trying to be family." "No," I said, and my voice was hard now, all the years of swallowed anger finally finding release. "You were trying to use me. You thought I was desperate and weak and dependent. You thought you could turn me into your personal handyman and feel good about yourselves for giving me shelter. You didn't offer help out of love. You offered exploitation out of contempt." "This is insane," Derek said. He was pacing now, his face flushed. "You're insane. We're family. You can't do this to family." "I can," I said. "And I am. The rent increase is legal. The notice is valid. You have 30 days to decide if you're staying or leaving." Melissa was crying now, but they weren't sad tears. They were angry tears, frustrated tears, the tears of someone who just realized they'd miscalculated badly. "We'll fight this," she said. "We'll get a lawyer. You can't just—" "I can," I interrupted. "Check with a lawyer if you want. I did everything by the book, but while you're at it, maybe ask your lawyer how much it costs to fight an eviction case you can't win. Legal fees might be more than just accepting the new rent or finding a cheaper place." I turned toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Derek, about that basement you wanted me to clean? I won't be doing that, but I'll be happy to inspect it as your landlord to make sure you're not violating any terms of your lease by using it as unauthorized storage. I believe cluttered basements can be a fire hazard." His face went purple. I walked out, closing the door gently behind me. Behind me, I heard Derek shout, "Fuck!" and the sound of something being thrown. I wasn't quite done. From my briefcase, I pulled out one more item, a laminated notice, professionally printed, designed to be weather-resistant and clearly visible. I'd had it made at a print shop that morning. It was formatted exactly like the notices that property management companies use, with official-looking headers and clear, bold text. "Notice to tenant property, 2847. Riverside Avenue, Unit 4. New ownership, Harlow Property Holdings, LLC. Current monthly rent, $100 new monthly rent, effective 30 days. 1,840. Rent payments must be submitted by the 1st of each month. Late fees apply after 5-day grace period. Questions or concerns should be directed to the Property Management Office. At the bottom, in smaller text, failure to pay rent as specified will result in eviction proceedings. In accordance with state law, I taped it to their door, right in the center, at eye level, where anyone walking by could see it. Neighbors were starting to emerge from their units, drawn by Derek's shouting. They watched as I carefully smoothed the notice flat, making sure it was perfectly straight. Mrs. Chen from Unit 3 approached hesitantly. "Mr. Harlow, are you the new owner?" "I am," I confirmed. "Is everything all right?" She glanced at Unit 4's door nervously. "Everything's fine, Mrs. Chen. Your lease terms aren't changing. This only affects month-to-month tenants who've been paying below market rate." "That's Melissa's father, isn't it?" someone whispered from the courtyard below. "Yeah," someone else whispered back. I heard him yelling, something about rent going up. The door to Unit 4 flew open. Derek stormed out, his face still purple with rage. "You can't do this," he shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is harassment. This is discrimination." "It's neither," I said calmly. "It's a standard rental adjustment to market rate for a month-to-month tenant. If you'd like to review state landlord-tenant law, you're welcome to do so." He reached for the notice, trying to rip it off the door. I pulled another copy from my briefcase and held it up. "I have 12 more copies," I said, "and every time you remove one, I'll replace it. Plus, I've documented this notice with photographs and sent copies to your email address, so destroying it doesn't eliminate your obligation to respond within 30 days. He froze, his hand on the notice, realizing that tearing it down would accomplish nothing except making him look worse in front of the neighbors, who were all watching now. Melissa appeared in the doorway behind him, her eyes red, her makeup smeared. "Dad, please," she said, "can we talk about this privately?" "There's nothing private to discuss," I said. "This is a business matter. You're a tenant. I'm the landlord. The terms of your tenancy are changing in accordance with state law. You can accept the new terms, or you can give 30 days' notice and move out. Those are your options." "But we can't afford 11840, she cried. "You know that. Our budget is already stretched. This will—" "Force you to make difficult choices," I interrupted. "Welcome to what most people deal with every day. You'll need to cut expenses, find additional income, or relocate to somewhere more affordable." "This is cruel," she said. "This is punishing us for offering you help." "No," I said quietly. "This is consequences. For years of treating me like I was worthless. For dismissing my worth because I didn't live the way you thought I should. For deciding that retirement made me your property to use however you wanted." I looked at Derek. "You told me to clean your basement, to mow your lawn, to earn my keep by being your servant. You thought I was desperate enough that I'd accept that." Then I looked at Melissa. "You said I should be useful for once. As if everything I'd done for you, every sacrifice I'd made, didn't count because I didn't have the right kind of success to make you look good." I stepped back from their door, from their shocked faces, from the growing crowd of neighbors pretending not to stare. "The notice stands," I said. "You have 30 days. I suggest you use that time wisely." I walked down the stairs, through the courtyard, to my car. Behind me, I heard Melissa say, "What are we going to do?" in a voice filled with panic. I didn't turn around. They'd figure it out. Or they wouldn't. Either way, it was no longer my problem. By 8 p.m. that evening, my phone had registered 19 missed calls from Melissa. I'd silenced it after the 5th call, knowing that she'd keep trying, knowing that each unanswered call would increase her desperation. The voicemails ranged from angry to pleading to threatening. Message 3. "Dad, you need to call me back right now. We need to fix this." And message 7. "This is insane. You're ruining our lives. How can you do this?" Message 11. "Please, Dad. Please call me. We can work something out. I'm sorry. Just please talk to me." Message 16. "Fine. Don't answer. But this isn't over. We're not just going to accept this." I deleted them all without listening to the full messages. Derek had started texting around the same time. The texts were more aggressive. "You think you can do this? You think this is legal? We're getting a lawyer. This is elder abuse in reverse. You're using your position to hurt family. That's prosecutable. Melissa is crying. Are you happy now? You've destroyed your daughter. We took you in, we offered you a home, and this is how you repay us? Whatever you think we did to you, this is a 1000x worse. You're a vindictive old man." I read them with detachment. Every text just confirmed what I already knew. They were panicking because they'd lost control. because the person they'd written off as weak and desperate had turned out to have power they'd never suspected. Around 9 p.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was Melissa calling from someone else's phone, but curiosity won out. Hello? Mr. Harlow, this is James Keaton. I'm an attorney. Melissa Cross and Derek Cross have retained me to review a landlord-tenant matter. So they'd actually hired a lawyer. Fast work? Go ahead, I said. I've reviewed the notices you served today, and I need to inform you that my clients believe these rental adjustments constitute retaliatory action against tenants who... Let me stop you there, I interrupted. The rental adjustment brings their unit to market rate, which is my right as owner for month-to-month tenants with proper notice. Retaliation would be if I raised their rent in response to them exercising a legal right. They haven't exercised any legal rights. They've simply been paying below market rent under the previous owner, and that arrangement is ending. There was a pause. Mr. Harlow, are you represented by counsel? I am. Richard Soto at Soto & Partners. Would you like his contact information so this conversation can happen properly between attorneys? Another pause. That would be appropriate. I gave him Richard's number, then added, Mr. Keaton, you should know that I documented everything. The rental adjustment is legally sound. Every communication with the tenants has been professional and by the book. If your clients want to contest this, they're welcome to try. But I'd advise them to consider the cost of legal action versus just finding a more affordable apartment. I'll discuss options with my clients, he said stiffly, and hung up. I immediately called Richard, my attorney, to give him a heads up. Vincent, Richard answered. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. How did it go? They hired a lawyer already, James Keaton. He's going to contact you. Richard laughed. Keaton's a decent attorney, but he's not a miracle worker. If your documentation is as solid as you told me, he's going to advise them to accept the terms or move out. Fighting this would cost them more than a year's worth of the rent increase. That's what I figured, I said. How are you holding up? Richard asked, his voice becoming more serious. This has to be emotionally difficult, even if it's legally justified? I thought about that. Was it difficult? In some ways, yes. This was my daughter. Despite everything, despite the years of disrespect, she was still the little girl I'd raised, the child I'd loved unconditionally, but she was also the adult who'd decided I was worthless unless I could serve her purposes. The woman who'd laughed when her husband told me to clean their basement, the daughter who'd told me to be useful for once. I'm fine, I told Richard. This needed to happen. Okay, he said. Well, I'll handle Keaton when he calls. You focus on moving into your new place and enjoying actual retirement. At 11 p.m., my phone rang again. Melissa, calling from her own number this time. I almost let it go to voicemail again, but something made me answer. Dad, she said immediately, her voice thick with tears. Dad, please, we need to talk like family. We are talking like family, I said calmly. I'm treating you exactly like I'd treat any other family member, with respect, within appropriate boundaries, and with consequences for behavior. You're destroying us, she cried. We can't afford $1,840 a month. Our budget doesn't work with that. We'll have to move, and we can't find anywhere else in this neighborhood for less. And Ethan's school is here, and Derek's commute from anywhere cheaper would be terrible, and... Those are choices you'll need to make, I said. Difficult choices, yes, but choices nonetheless. How can you be so cold? The tears in her voice were giving way to anger. I'm your daughter. And I'm your father, I replied. The father you decided was worthless. The father you planned to turn into an unpaid servant. The father you told to be useful for once. I didn't mean we were just... You meant it, I said. You meant every word. You looked at my modest life and decided I'd failed. You looked at my retirement and decided I'd be your burden. You looked at me and saw someone you could use. That's not fair, she protested. Fair? I repeated. Melissa, was it fair when you didn't invite me to Thanksgiving 5 years ago because your in-laws were coming and you didn't want them to see our economic disparity? Was it fair when Derek sold the comics I'd given Ethan for his birthday? Was it fair when you told me my opinion didn't matter in family decisions? When was any of that fair? Silence. Then, you remember all of that? I remember everything, I said quietly. Every slight, every dismissal, every time you made it clear I was less than. I remember all of it, Melissa. More silence. Then, in a smaller voice, what do you want from us? I don't want anything from you, I said. I want you to make your own choices and live with the consequences, the same way everyone else does. But you're my father. Which is exactly why this hurts so much, I interrupted. Because a father is supposed to be someone you value, someone you respect, someone you love, not because of what they can give you, but because of who they are. And you've made it clear for years that you don't value or respect me. So now we have a different kind of relationship. Landlord and tenant. That's what you've earned. Dad, please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it. For everything. Please, can we just talk? Can I come over? Can we work this out? The rent is $1,840 starting in 30 days, I said. That's what we can work out. Pay it or move. Those are your options. You're being cruel, she said, her voice breaking. You're punishing me for mistakes by ruining our lives. No, I said. I'm letting you experience consequences. There's a difference. Your life isn't ruined, Melissa. You're just not getting what you wanted for free. Welcome to adulthood. I hung up. She called back immediately. I sent it to voicemail. The next morning, I received an email from Derek's personal account to my business email address. The subject line was Final Offer. Vincent, let's cut through the bullshit. You've made your point. You're not weak. You're not broke. You're not desperate. We get it. We were wrong about you. But this has gone far enough. You've scared us. You've made us panic. You've shown us you have power. Congratulations. Now let's end this before it destroys what's left of this family. Here's what we're proposing. 1, you reduce the rent increase to something reasonable, not $740 more. That's excessive. Maybe $200 more. We can handle $200. 2, we agree to help you move into Unit 12. We'll do the labor for free as a gesture of good faith. 3, we start over. Clean slate. You're not our servant. We're not your enemies. We're family, and we figure out how to act like it. 4, we don't talk about this situation with anyone else. No airing dirty laundry. We keep family business private. This is a fair offer. It acknowledges we were wrong while also acknowledging that you're going too far with this punishment. If you refuse this, if you insist on the full rent increase, then we'll have no choice but to fight this however we can. Legal action, family intervention, public pressure, whatever it takes. Your move. Derek. I read the email 3 times. Then I forwarded it to Richard with a note. Please draft a formal response. TLDR. No. Richard called me 10 minutes later, laughing. He actually thinks he has leverage, Richard said. He's threatening legal action that he can't afford and public pressure that would make him look terrible. And he's calling a market rate rent adjustment excessive punishment. Draft something professional, I said, but make it clear that the terms stand. With pleasure, Richard said. The response went out 2 hours later. Mr. Cross, thank you for your email. Mr. Harlow has reviewed your proposal and declines. The rental adjustment to market rate stands as communicated in the official notice. This adjustment is standard for month-to-month tenants and is consistent with comparable units in the area. Your options remain unchanged, accept the new rental terms, or provide 30 days notice and vacate the unit. There is no family business exception to standard landlord-tenant practices. All tenants, regardless of relationship to the owner, are subject to the same lease terms and legal requirements. Regarding your mention of legal action, Mr. Harlow's actions are fully compliant with state landlord-tenant law. Should you choose to pursue litigation, please direct all further communications through this office. Sincerely, Richard Soto, attorney at law on behalf of Harlow Property Holdings, LLC. Within an hour, I received one more message from Melissa. Not a call, not an email, a text message, just 2 sentences. You've won. Are you happy now? I stared at that message for a long time. Was I happy? No. Vindicated? Yes. Satisfied that consequences had finally caught up with their behavior? Yes. But happy? No. I didn't respond. Because the truth was, I'd lost something too. I'd lost the illusion that my daughter and I could repair our relationship. I'd lost the hope that she'd see me differently, value me differently, treat me differently. This action, buying the building, raising the rent, enforcing boundaries, wasn't about winning. It was about protecting myself from people who demonstrated they couldn't be trusted with my vulnerability. It was about saying, you don't get to treat me like I'm worthless and then demand I support you. It was about justice. But justice and happiness aren't the same thing. 28 days after I served the notice, Derek and Melissa paid the increased rent. They didn't move out. They didn't negotiate. They just paid. Sarah from the property management office called to confirm receipt of the payment. Unit 4 paid in full for next month, she said. They paid on time, no drama. I'm actually surprised. So am I admitted. Apparently they cut their spending dramatically. Sold the new car and bought a used one. canceled their vacation plans, cut back on everything. But they're staying, I said, for now. They put in writing that they're looking for other options, but need time. Asked if you'd consider a 6-month lease at the new rate to give them stability while they search. I thought about that. A 6-month lease would lock them in, yes, but it would also lock me in to not raising the rent further if market rates continued to climb. No, I decided. Month-to-month terms remain. If they want stability, they can find it elsewhere. Your call, Sarah said. I'll let them know. I'd moved into Unit 12 3 weeks earlier. It was small but comfortable. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a galley kitchen, a living room with large windows that faced east, catching the morning sun. I'd furnished it simply. A bed, a couch, a desk, my books, my few meaningful possessions. It felt like home in a way that no place had felt since my wife died. And I lived here rent-free in a building that generated income that more than covered all expenses, in a city where I'd spent my career, 2 floors above a daughter who was finally learning what consequences felt like. 6 weeks after the rental increase took effect, there was a knock on my door on a Saturday morning. I opened it to find Ethan standing in the hallway, alone. "Grandpa," he said uncertainly. "Can I talk to you?" I stepped aside. "Of course. Come in." He entered hesitantly, looking around at the small apartment. "This is where you live now?" "It is," I confirmed. "Can I get you something? Water? Juice?" "I'm okay." He sat on the edge of my couch, nervous. "My parents don't know I'm here. They think I'm at the library." "I see," I said carefully. "I wanted to ask you something," Ethan said. He looked up at me with his grandmother's eyes, clear and direct. "Did you really buy this building just to hurt my parents?" I sat down in the chair across from him. "No. I bought this building because it was a good investment and because I wanted to live here. The fact that it created consequences for your parents' behavior was a side effect." "But you raised their rent a lot," he said. "Like a lot. Mom cried for a week. Dad keeps saying we might have to move." "The rent I charge them is the market rate," I explained. "It's what anyone else would charge for that unit. The previous owner was giving them a discount because he knew Derek's family. I'm not giving discounts." "Because you're mad at them," Ethan said. "Because I'm treating them like any other tenant," I corrected. "If they were strangers, they'd pay the same amount." Ethan was quiet for a moment, processing that. "They said you were being mean," he said finally. "But I heard what Dad said that night, about you cleaning the basement and mowing the lawn, about you being their servant." "You heard that?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "I was in my room, but I heard everything. Dad was really mean to you, and Mom just laughed, and I felt bad, because you're my grandpa, and they were talking to you like you were nothing." "Ethan!" "And then you left," he continued, "and Dad said you were weak, but you weren't weak. You were just not fighting back. But then you did fight back, just not the way he expected." This kid was too perceptive for 12 years old. "I did," I admitted. "You're right. I fought back by setting boundaries and enforcing consequences." "Are you still my grandpa?" he asked, and his voice was small. "Or are we not family anymore because of this?" My heart broke a little. "Ethan, I will always be your grandfather. Always. What's happening between your parents and me doesn't change that. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't treat me badly. This isn't about you." "But I can't see you anymore," he said. "Mom said you're not welcome at our apartment, and if I come see you, she gets mad." "Then we'll have to figure out another way," I said. "Maybe we meet at the library or at the park, or I can pick you up from school sometimes if your parents allow it. We'll figure it out, Ethan. I promise." He looked relieved. "Okay, because I missed you, and I wanted to say, I don't think you were wrong. I think Dad and Mom were wrong, and you just showed them, like in comic books when the hero lets the villain think they're winning, but really they have a plan the whole time." I almost smiled at that. Life isn't quite like comic books. But yes, I had a plan. "A good plan," Ethan said. Then, "Are they ever going to apologize? Like really apologize?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe. Or maybe they'll just learn to treat people better in the future, even if they don't acknowledge the past." "That seems like cheating," Ethan said. "Like they get to just forget what they did." "Sometimes people don't forget," I told him. "They just learn to live with the consequences of their choices, and that's its own kind of justice." We talked for another hour, about school, about his interests, about the future, normal grandparent-grandson conversation, the kind we should have been having all along without the interference of parents who saw me as less than. When he left, he hugged me tight. "I love you, Grandpa," he said. "I love you too, Ethan," I replied. "Always." 3 months later, Melissa and Derek were still in Unit 4, still paying the increased rent, still living with the consequences of having underestimated their weak, broke, dependent father. They didn't speak to me. We passed each other in the hallway sometimes, and they'd avert their eyes, hurrying past like I was a stranger. That was fine. I didn't need their conversation. Sarah reported that they were good tenants now, paid on time, followed all rules, made no complaints. Fear of eviction was apparently a powerful motivator for compliance. I settled into retirement properly. The building income covered all my expenses with room to spare. I traveled a little. Nothing extravagant, just trips to national parks and historical sites I'd always wanted to see. I read more, started taking a painting class at the community center, made friends with other retirees who didn't judge my worth by my bank balance. And I saw Ethan regularly. Every other Saturday, we'd meet at the library or the park, and I'd take him for lunch. Melissa had grudgingly agreed to this, probably because refusing would make her look bad, or maybe because Ethan had insisted. 6 months after the rent increase, I received an envelope slipped under my door. No return address, just Vincent, written on the front in Melissa's handwriting. Inside was a single page, handwritten. "Dad, I don't know if this means anything to you now, but I need to say it. I'm sorry. Not sorry that you raised the rent. That's just business. I understand that now. But sorry for how we treated you before that. For years. For the things we said and the way we made you feel. Derek and I have been in counseling. The financial stress broke something open in our marriage, and we had to either fix it or end it. We're choosing to fix it, and part of that is acknowledging how we got here. We treated you like you were worthless. We measured your value by your bank account instead of your character. We decided retirement made you our responsibility to use however we wanted. We were wrong about all of it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect a response to this letter. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see how cruel we were. And I'm ashamed. You were always enough. You were always more than enough. I'm the one who was lacking in gratitude, lacking in respect, lacking in basic human decency toward the person who raised me and loved me unconditionally. I can't undo what we did, but I can try to be better going forward. Not for you. You don't owe me anything. But for myself and for Ethan, so he doesn't grow up thinking it's okay to treat people the way we treated you. I love you, Dad. I don't know if you believe that anymore, but I do. Melissa. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer with other important documents and sat by my window, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. Did I forgive her? I wasn't sure yet. Forgiveness felt like something that would take time, like trust that had to be rebuilt slowly, deliberately, through actions rather than words. But I believed she was sorry, and I believed she was trying to change. Maybe that was enough for now. The next time I saw Ethan, I told him he could tell his mother that I received her letter. "What should I say you said?" he asked. "Tell her I said, actions speak louder than words. Show me the change, and we'll see where we go from there." "That's very grandpa of you," Ethan said, grinning. "It's very human of me," I corrected, which is all I ever wanted to be treated as. 5 years later, I still own the building. Melissa and Derek still live in Unit 4, though they've stopped looking for other options. They've adjusted to the rent, adjusted their lifestyle, learned to live within their means rather than beyond them. We have dinner once a month now, the 3 of us and Ethan, sometimes at their place, sometimes at mine. The conversations are careful at first, gradually becoming more natural, rebuilding something that resembles a family relationship. It's not what it was before, and it's not what I'd hoped it would be, but it's something. It's progress. Derek apologized eventually. Took him 3 years, but he did it. Shook my hand and said, "I was an asshole. You deserved better." Short, direct, honest. I accepted the apology because it came with changed behavior. He treats me with respect now, asks my opinion, listens when I speak, shows up for Ethan's events, and makes sure I'm invited too. Sometimes people do change, when the consequences are real enough, when the cost of not changing is too high. I never regretted buying the building, never regretted raising the rent, never regretted enforcing boundaries that forced my family to see me as something other than a resource to exploit. Because here's what I learned. You teach people how to treat you. If you accept disrespect, you get more disrespect. If you allow yourself to be used, you'll continue to be used. But if you stand up, calmly, legally, firmly, and say, "No more," sometimes people learn. Not always, not everyone, but sometimes. And even if they don't learn, you've still protected yourself. You've still maintained your dignity. you've still refused to participate in your own diminishment. That's worth something. That's worth everything.